Hey, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I want to be talking about how to know when it's actually time and you're ready to start running paid advertising for your contracting business or your home service business. So I want to talk about how to know when your operations are ready to actually start advertising, right? To make sure that you have the best possible chance of getting a positive return on investment on the money that you invest into your business. I also want to talk about when you're at a revenue point that it makes sense to start advertising, how to know if it's too early to start advertising, and how to know if you need to start advertising right away, right? Because a lot of times home service businesses, I see them starting too late and then they're playing catch up, right? If they had just started a little earlier, they could have been way further ahead, which I obviously don't want to have happen. And then I also want to address a question that we get asked all the time as an agency. Well, if I'm already doing $2, $3, $4 million a year, why would I ever need your help as an agency? Right? So if you don't know who I am, my name is Hunter Larson. I'm the co-founder of Second Take. In the last 18 months, we've generated a little over $17 million for our clients in the home service business industry. All right, so let's dive right on in. So the very first thing that I want to address is how to know if your business is ready for advertising. So there's something that we see a lot happen in the home business industry, home services, is you need to have some operational things done, right? Some things need to be in place in order to actually make advertising worth it for your business. So the first one is a 5-minute speed to lead. So you've probably heard this before, right? Someone tells you, hey, in order to make advertising profitable, you need to call your leads quickly, right? And that can't be any more true, right? It is literally the most important thing when you're advertising. You must be calling leads quickly and following up, consistently. But what I think people forget to talk about is why you should call your leads fast. Because I think a lot of people tell you this and then they just expect you to do it, right? But they don't ever explain why, right? So I want to do that really quickly. So in advertising, when we're doing paid advertising, people are going to come into your funnel with varying levels of interest. So we have general interest, right? We have moderate interest, and then we have convicted. So this is obviously very simplified. There's going to be lots of different levels to this. But what I want to articulate is that this level of convicted, this is where the money is made, right? And basically what that is that's when a prospect is like, yes, you're the company for me. We have a need. You're going to be the best one to solve it. Right? And that's when they close a deal. They're like, yeah, we're ready to go. Where do I sign? Right? That's convicted. However, the majority of leads that come in from paid advertising are not going to be at this convicted level of interest, right? And that's what a sales process is for. And that's also why calling leads is so important, because most leads that come in are going to have this general level of interest right here, right? Some of them might have this moderate level of interest and will require a little bit less of a sales process. Now, why does this matter in the context of calling your leads quickly? Now, as soon as someone fills out a lead form, they're going to immediately go into kind of this detective mode. They're going to start trying to figure out, are you a good company? And as they do that, their level of interest for your company starts to decline, okay? So over time, they're going to start to lose the amount of interest that they have. And general interest is the base level of interest that they need to be able to fill out a lead form, okay? So if we know that as soon as they fill out that lead form, literally within hours, they might lose that level of interest, which is what causes them to say, it's not worth talking to them anymore. I'm not going to answer the phone. Right? Or you do get them on the phone and they're like, oh, we already talked to another company. They might remember filling out a form for you, right? But they might not actually do anything about it. They're going to be like, yeah, we've already got this taken care of, right? That's when you're going to start hearing things like that. So we want to hit them right where their interest is the highest that it will ever be before we talk to them, obviously. So that's why calling your leads quickly is so important. Now, the next thing that we need to get right is we need to have brand consistency. Okay? When I say that, I don't just mean that you should be, have a fancy brand like Apple or something, right? You don't need a fancy logo, right? You just need to have a brand that people can remember, right? And the way that we do that is we need to have a website. We need to have a website that is professional. We can't have a website that looks like it was made in 2004, right? It needs to be a professionally designed website that has your brand colors, your logo, and has messaging that makes you stand out, right? And that's something that a lot of smaller home service companies don't have yet, right? They might have a website, but it's not super professional, right? It was cheaply made, and it got you through, 0 to where you're at today. But in order to get to 10, 15, $20 million a year, you're going to need to invest pretty heavily in making sure that your brand is consistent and starts to attract people just based on the fact that they know your company and they have seen your brand. Now, the next thing is your ads must be congruent with your brand. Okay, so what do I mean by this? So a lot of advertising agencies, and I call them agencies, but they're really normally just like a guy in a dark room, right? That's not really an agency, it's just a dude that's like making some ads for you. They don't really make ads that look like your company's ads, right? And so what happens is you'll get some leads, right? And they might have varying levels of interest, right, et cetera. They might be kind of junk leads, but like you might get some leads, you might close a few deals. If you ask them in 6 months what your company is, they won't remember, right? Or somebody sees your ad and then they see another ad and it doesn't look like the same company, right? It looks like a completely different company, right? And I'm sure you've seen ads like this if you've worked with an agency before where it's just like, what is this, dude? Like, this doesn't look like it's our company's ad. Like, it just looks like a generic template, right? And so you need to start thinking about this. You need to make sure that the agencies you work with are going to make ads that are on brand, right? Because that's a huge thing in the trades business is trust, right? And reputation, right? So as we advertise and we get in front of people, we're not just getting leads, we're also building the amount of recall that people have for your brand, right? So that's extremely important. And the next thing is our messaging needs to be the same across website, ad, and the sales process. So across the entire existence of working with your company, it should all feel congruent, right? The messaging should be congruent. Everything should feel like this is one company talking to them, not I clicked on this website, I filled out this form, and then the salesperson saying something else, and it's just a mess, right? And then they see ads and they're like, what is this? Right? It all needs to be consistent because that is going to give you the best possible chance of not only seeing your ads become profitable, but you'll also notice that your top line revenue for your company will increase as well, right? You'll start to get more referrals, more phone calls organically. People will start to search your brand on Google more often, right? This is extremely, extremely powerful when done correctly that too many agencies do not focus on. And so you must work with somebody who knows how to do this, right? So if you would like for us to do that, we do this for our clients literally every day, all year, right? We do this like all the time. You can click the link in the description. You can apply to have an assessment call with us, and we'll take a look at kind of your brand right now and see if this is something that we can help you with. Now, the next thing that we need to talk about is having content, right? So we can call this the content engine, all right? Now, what I mean by this, you don't need to become a content creator, right? That is not what I'm talking about. But you do need to have some way to collect Google reviews on a regular basis. So you need to have a review system. You can't just rely on people looking up your company because they loved you so much to hopefully leave you a review, right? This needs to be ingrained in every single person on the team to say, hey, after you complete a job, you go directly to the person who paid us and you say, we would love a Google review from you guys, right? Here's a QR code, scan it with your phone right now, leave a review for us, right? And I highly recommend incentivizing this in your crew members that every review they get where their name is mentioned, right? Or the company's name is mentioned, etc., they get some sort of commission, right? Maybe that's $50, maybe that's $100, maybe that's a gift card to their favorite restaurant, right? Incentivize this. Give your crew a reason to care, right? Because no one cares about your business the way you do, right? That's just not realistic. But if they get money, right, they will care a lot, right? So make sure you incentivize reviews. It's extremely important for your business. As you know, reputation is everything, right? So make sure that you're collecting Google reviews. Now, the next thing is have a photo process, right? So generally in the trades, right, this is going to be before and afters, right? So in the example of kitchen remodeling, right, let's say you go in, your client pays you to, remodel their kitchen, and you take a before picture of the kitchen, and then you take an after of the finished product, right? The whole kitchen is completely redone. And what that does is psychologically to a prospect, right, they see, wow, like that kitchen looks like shit before, look at it now. Wow, that's beautiful, right? So we're showing the prospect, here's the before state, here's the after state of where they want to go, right? And showing them that your company is the one that took that prospect, your past clients through that, right? It shows expertise and it builds trust with your company, right? So it's extremely important that your crew is taking quality before and after photos as well. Okay, so that's another part of the content engine that I'm talking about. And then obviously, you don't need to be a content creator, but I highly recommend that you have some sort of posting schedule. So 2 times per week is generally what we recommend of posts that are valuable, right? And this is the thing that a lot of contractors aren't good at, is they don't make posts on social media organically that are valuable to prospects, right? Now, a lot of times what people think is they need to make posts that are, fancy and look really, just spectacular, right, on the platform. And it couldn't be further from the truth, right? All you need to do is think about what are the common questions that our prospects ask that we can answer for them. What are objections, expectation misalignment? What are the common things they look for when they're in the sales process, right? Talk about these things on social media so that way when someone looks your company up, they can see all of their questions. They can get answers to their questions. They can see that you guys are in tune with what they're thinking. In the world of marketing, the company who knows their customer better than the next one is the one that wins. So make content around the things that your sales team is hearing on a regular basis. All right, cool. So once you have those, that means that you're likely ready to start advertising. However, I do want to make it clear that you shouldn't expect to be able to have success with advertising if you're working on a shoestring budget. So how do we discover if we have a good enough budget to become profitable on Google or Facebook? So generally speaking, you want to be spending about 30% of net margin towards advertising. Let's say that you're making $1 million in revenue and your net margin is 20%, okay? That leaves you with $200,000 profit per year, all right? What happens is let's say we spend 30% of that, right? That's $60,000, so 60,000, right? And if we subtract 60,000 from 200,000, that only leaves you with $140,000 to pay for unexpected expenses, to pay yourself, to scale your trucks, right? Get things detailed, et cetera, right? Whatever you need that money for, which is not that much money, right? That is really not a lot of money to do anything extraordinary with. Unexpected expense happens, right? But now, let's say that you're doing $2 million per year, okay? And you have a 20% net margin, right? That means that you have $400,000 in profit per year, right? And then 30% of that is $120,000 per year in ads. So this is ads budget, which means you have $280,000 per year for unexpected expenses, right? So as you can see, the more revenue you make, right, the more you have to cushion the amount that you need to spend to make unexpected expenses possible, right, to pay the credit card bill, et cetera, right, while still getting your name out there aggressively with homeowners, all right? So if you're super small, a lot of times what I see contractors doing is they'll say, well, I only have $200,000 in profit per year, so I'm only gonna spend $12,000 on ads, right? So they're like, okay, I'll just spend $12K per year on ads per year, right? So that's $1,000 per month. And then what happens is they realize pretty quickly that $1,000 a month doesn't really make a huge difference in their business, right? And they might as well not be spending the money at all. Because generally speaking, in the trades business, advertising is pretty competitive. You are fortunate to be in an industry where job sizes can be quite extraordinarily large. Contractors that are doing, $5, $10, $15 million a year spend a lot of money on advertising, right? And so they take the lion's share of the good quality prospects that are out there. And then your $1,000 per month budget doesn't really do a whole lot, right? And then this is where you're gonna start to chase your tail. You're gonna spend money on ads. You're not gonna get a return that you're really happy with. You can't really scale because you don't have it, so you just stay stuck in this loop of spending money without really seeing a good return on investment, right? So that's really why a larger budget is going to take you further, right? Because generally speaking, you're going to be spending anywhere between $250 to $1,000 to acquire a client. So that's your cost of acquisition. So if you have $120,000 in ad spend, that's 120 clients that you can close that year, right? If you only do 12, that's only 12 new clients. Right now, obviously, depending on the service, right? If you're like a home builder, right, that would be exceptional, right? But for the majority of you guys watching this, that is not really that impressive, right? That's not going to make a huge difference in your bottom line at the end of the day. You might make an extra couple $100,000 per month, right? But like what the hell are you gonna do with that, right? It's not beneficial to most of you guys out there. So that's something to consider, right? Take a look at your net margin at the end of each year and take 30% of that. And if that's not at least $3,000 to $4,000 per month, really probably not even worth it to start advertising. All right, so you hit $2 million a year, you're making good profit, right, et cetera, and you're like, okay, I think I'm ready to start advertising. But you're like, well, I've gotten to this point where I've gotten to 2 million per year on word of mouth. Why do I need an agency, right? What is an agency actually going to do for me that I can't do for myself, right? And this is something that we get asked a lot, right? People come in through our funnels, right? And they see what we do and they're like, well, like, why would I ever need to do that? Because I'm already making a lot of money and I'm, getting word of mouth. People love me, right? But the challenge with word of mouth is that constantly at the mercy of how many people that you work with tell people about you, right? How many people can actually talk about your company, right? If you're only doing 5, 15, 20 projects per month, that's really not that many people that get to hear about your company, right? Which is why word of mouth is great for getting started, but really isn't a scaling option once you try to get to the 5, 10, 15, 20 million dollars per year marks, right? And so advertising allows us to reach hundreds of thousands of people every single month that can start to see your business, right? And that's going to generate substantial amount of leads. And so what an agency allows you to do is it allows you to turn up the dial on how many leads you're getting, how much money you're making at any given month. So that way we can control. If you add another crew, we can say, we need more work. We'll scale up ads. We'll start to get more leads. So that way your sales team has more people to talk to, right? Which is why scaling requires advertising. It's not a nice to have, right? It requires it to get to the next level because we have to get in front of enough people to make your company well known and growing quickly. So that's just wanted to address that because I think a lot of contractors think word of mouth is enough to get them to $10 million a year, and 9 times out of 10 that is not the case, right? Now, another thing that I want to address really quickly is a lot of times what contractors will do is they'll see, the management fee of an agency and they'll go, well, I can make some ads, I can do that myself, right? Or they try to hire someone in-house to do that for them. And what they don't see is the wasted ad spend, right? When you're advertising on Facebook or Google, it requires a high level of management and an understanding of how to buy ads and show it to the correct people, right? And making sure that when things aren't stable, that we do things in the account to make it stable, right? And so a lot of times when you try to do it yourself, you're gonna waste thousands of dollars trying to figure it out, right? And if you try to scale your budget, but then you don't scale up the amount of ads that you create, you're again not gonna have a good time, right? Because you're gonna be scaling into ads that people have seen 5, 10, 15 times and are starting to become blind to because they just have seen the ad too many times and they're like, well, I already know what this is. They just scroll right past it, right? So it's extremely important that as you start to scale up, you work with an agency who has experience scaling ad accounts, can create enough ads for you to keep that scale going, and can consult you and show you the path that you're about to walk down before you get there, right? And that's one of the benefits of an agency is that we work with hundreds of people, right, across the US. We work with lots of different companies who have been there and done that, right? So we can show you, hey, you're getting to $6 million a year. Here's the trap that you're about to fall into. We're gonna save you from that. So in conclusion, I wanna address this. If you have a sales team who is set up to call leads quickly, so that way we can take advantage of that level of interest they have as soon as they submit the lead form on Facebook or on your website, then that means that you're ready to possibly start advertising, assuming that you also have brand consistency, right? Your website's professional, it's up to date, your ads are congruent with your brand, and your messaging between your website, your ads, and your sales process is all congruent. You have a content engine where you're getting reviews on a consistent basis. You're taking pictures of projects so that way you can leverage those for social media content, on the website, etc. And you're posting about 2 times a week so that way you can start to build your social media presence. Then advertising is probably right for you, and we'd love to potentially take a look at what you've got going on right now and see how we could possibly help you, right? So if you're doing $2 million a year, and you have some of these things in place, you can click the link in the description to have an assessment call where I'll personally look through your ad account, look at your marketing strategy that you have right now, and see if this might be a good fit for us to possibly help you with it. So I think that's all for now. I will see you in the next video.